Hello, good morning everybody. I'm actually very surprised that I'm even filming this video. It is Sunday. The video is supposed to come out 3 hours ago, and this week has been a little difficult, more difficult than the other weeks. Monday, baby was having a meltdown at someone's house. Wednesday, she had a meltdown at the mall, and then her sleeping at night was just really off. And then we went to see an osteopath on Thursday, and after that she was super tired, like slept 3.5 hours straight, I think it was, and then slept like another 3.5 hours. So her sleeping schedule was just off. She was having a lot of meltdowns. I haven't had much time to film. So I'm trying my best to film today and either have it out by tonight or tomorrow at the max. I wanted to film a postpartum Q&A. However, I will be touching on all things pregnancy, breastfeeding, postpartum, C-section, all kinds of stuff. I am going to be very honest with you. I made like a Q&A box on Instagram, but I'm not somebody with like a ton of followers on Instagram, and that would have like hit my ego so hard in the past that I would have like posted a Q&A box and no one wrote anything. But I think in the transition from maiden to mother, that's one thing that like just kind of leaves, is like you just don't care what people think about you anymore. So anyways, all that to say, I didn't get any questions asked, but I really wanted to make a Q&A video. So I kind of did like, you know how when you're in high school and one of your homeworks is to like come up with 10 questions to ask about a text or something or whatever, and then answer them, or you answer friends or something. So I came up with my own questions for this Q&A, ones that I think would be helpful for people, things that I was actually looking up throughout this journey, I'll say, of becoming a mother. So all these questions are taken from my own head. We are being very humble in 2024. Do not forget to hit the subscribe button below. I make all kinds of content about motherhood. It used to be a lot about adventuring, and it will continue to be that in the future as summer rolls around and as baby gets a little bit older. So don't forget to subscribe, to please give this video a little like, and also check out the description for a little bit more info about my Patreon if you have an extra minute. And I will put a box here thanking my patrons, the people who help me work towards my dreams every month. Let's get into the questions. Did you struggle with breastfeeding? Any tips? And I wrote these as if someone literally asked me them, even though it was myself, okay? Don't judge me. So did I struggle with breastfeeding, and any tips? So I mentioned in a past video that when I got home from the hospital, my nipples were cracked and bleeding, and I was asking like my other friend, because she had a baby around the same time as me, if hers were doing the same, because I thought maybe this was just like a rite of passage, like this happens to everybody, but no, it doesn't. It was just a really bad latch. So I'll walk you through a bit of my breastfeeding journey. So baby was born by C-section, emergency C-section. If you don't know that story, you can watch the video, I'll put it up here. She came out ready to suck, ready for milk. The second that they put her on me, she was like drinking, right? What I didn't know is that I was holding her in cradle, and she was basically just on like the tip of the nipple, and that's not a very good latch. You want like the whole nipple in the mouth. So by day like 2, every time she would go on, I would like have to look up and be like take a really deep breath because it burned, and I thought that was normal. I think I have a pretty high pain tolerance, because some people are like, that feeling was like completely unbearable, and I was willing to stick with that feeling for like a year if I had to breastfeed her, because I thought it was normal. So I think I have a pretty high pain tolerance. I think I would say that I went to like heaven for a second every time she would try to latch because it hurt so bad. So yes, I struggled with breastfeeding at the beginning. The first 3 days or 4 days, I think it was 4 days, that was the situation. And by the time I had my first midwife come over to my house, because where I live you get a midwife visit at your house on day 3 and day 5. My day 3 visit ended up being on day 4, and the one was day 6 or 7, I think. But anyways, so by the time my midwife came, my boobs were engorged. Like my bra there was like this much space between the strap and like my skin because of how engorged they were, and it was just pulling the strap so much. I was cracked, bleeding. Baby couldn't latch on properly because they were so engorged. It was just a really big struggle. So the midwife taught me the cross cradle hold. The pediatrician had quickly showed me at the hospital, but I wasn't able to get it in like a second. So basically it's like, instead of cradling your baby like this, you take the baby, so like head is here, right? Instead you put this arm around them and hold their like the back of their neck and head. So you're like this, and then you hold and you put their head towards, and then they latch. Obviously it takes a lot of muscle, it takes a lot of strength to be able to do that, and by like the 5-week mark I was like unable to hold her like that anymore because she was so heavy. But that's how I first got it, and that's how I was able to start healing. So that was the first tip, was the cross cradle hold. I know it kind of goes against the whole like natural breastfeeding idea, you can look that up, but honestly that was the only way she was able to eat. So that was one of my tips. The other tip was you can get prescribed like a cream to heal your nipples. That really helped. I think you do it for 5 days after every single time that you feed, and you only do one breast at a time. So like you feed one breast for the full feeding. That way this one has like longer to rest. Then you put the cream, and then the next feeding will be completely on this side, and then that one has the time to rest. So kind of like that's like a 2-in-1 tip, I guess, the cream with the alternation. And even up to now, I still don't alternate in between feedings. I just stay on one. Then also I ended up using nipple shields, and I'm actually gonna remove this as a tip, but I ended up using nipple shields. They told me to use them for 24 hours just to really give them the time to heal, and also because I was so engorged. They didn't want me to get mastitis for 1 full day, so 24 hours. Then for the following 24 hours, use them every second feeding. However, when I was using them, my baby, she was suddenly feeding for like 30 minutes at a time, whereas normally she only feeds for like 5 to 10 minutes at a time because she's a really fast eater. And then I would feed her for 30 minutes and she'd still be hungry like every single time. Quickly realized that she wasn't able to like actually pull the milk out as efficiently, and she was just hungry all the time. So I quickly just stopped using nipple shields. I think I tried them for like 12 hours, and then I was just like, yeah, never mind, I'm not doing this. So that's my take on nipple shields. By the 7th day after she was born, everything was healed. So that was really, like, I was lucky. It felt so long, that those 7 days, but everything was healed, everything was back to normal, and she was feeding properly. So that's great. And one more tip for breastfeeding also, because then she got too heavy, is to put her lying down. Like I lie her on the bed, and then I just lie next to her and I feed that way. You feed from the breast that's closer to the mattress. Actually, one other thing that I struggled with breastfeeding as well is like my milk comes out way too fast, and so she chokes on it now. So I can't have her in any position where she's like under me, so or like under my breast, so like this, let's say, because if not, the milk comes out too quickly. So I have to have her basically parallel to me, so not like in cradle, so parallel or higher. I've really been having a hard time with breastfeeding in public. Obviously, if I go to like yoga, I can feed her while I'm on the mat in my yoga class, so I can lie down and it's fine. But in most public places, I can't just like lie on the floor. So that's been a challenge. I kind of have to, I've been trying to do the koala pose, or like the lying back pose, where like she kind of sits on your lap towards you and comes down with you, but she really struggles with that one. So I've been trying lately to put her in cradle, and then when she's latched, I like lift her upwards like this, and it looks really awkward, but that's the only thing that's kind of been working. So I still haven't gone over that hurdle of breastfeeding. That's my breastfeeding journey basically. I probably could have made a whole video on breastfeeding alone. Next question. Advice for postpartum. What is the hormone drop like? I don't know what to expect. And that I is me because I asked that question. I guess it's kind of like in retrospect what I would have asked myself, knowing what I know now. So the first 2 weeks, you're just like really emotional. So you cry a lot, like really easily, and then it just goes away. So it's not as bad as I thought. And like I'm talking about like baby blues. I'm not talking about postpartum depression. I didn't deal with that, so I can't say what that would be like. But in terms of baby blues, that's pretty much what it was like. Was 2 weeks I just felt really emotional. And I also knew that it was the hormone drop though, so it wasn't as bad as I thought. And then for me, I really wanted a lot of space and a lot of alone time, and I didn't want many people to like hold my baby, which I've spoken about a lot. And I think a lot of people, because I originally thought like everyone was going to be at the birth center with me when I gave birth, and like my whole family, like, cause you can really have as many people there as you want. So that was like my expectation. And then towards the end of my pregnancy, I finally decided like I just wanted me and Jeremy to be there, and I said maybe our moms. So suddenly there was a switch. I hadn't really mentally prepared anybody for that. So yeah, when I had the baby, and then suddenly I didn't really want people to hold her, I think it came as a shock to everyone. And I think it kind of like offended some people, like, you don't trust me with the baby and stuff like that. So my advice to you is kind of really get clear on what you want your postpartum to look like. And even if you only figure that out like a month before you give birth, I would say to make it very clear to everyone your expectations and what you want and don't want. If you don't think you're going to be comfortable with them holding the baby, because not it comes as like a shock, and then it's really hard for you to manage like saying no after, on top of the baby blues, on top if you're healing from a C-section. It's just a lot. So that would be my biggest advice probably. And then if let's say you don't want people to hold the baby but you still want that support, because I think it's really important postpartum, then maybe to have like a list of ways that people can help you. So like doing laundry, dishes, just social, like emotional support, just coming over and talking to you, picking something up on the way, cooking, little things like that. And that way people can kind of know how they can help if they want to. That's my postpartum advice. Do I like being pregnant? I hear a lot of people saying they hate it. This is something that I saw a lot before pregnancy. People saying that they loved like having a newborn, but they wouldn't, because of pregnancy, they wouldn't do it like 5 times, you know? And I think that's kind of sad. I loved being pregnant personally. I felt so full as a woman. I felt so like my life was so purposeful and meaningful, and I loved what I looked like pregnant. I felt really confident pregnant most of the time, I would say. So yeah, I liked it, and I just felt so full of life. And I actually find the transition after giving birth much more difficult, because suddenly, like, I used to feel like my body was just full of this life force energy, especially like in my womb area, obviously. And then suddenly after pregnancy, that was gone, and I just missed that energy that I had in my belly. So that's how I felt about pregnancy. I loved it. And you know, a lot of people are worried also about their body image and stretch marks and all that stuff. And I have like 2 spots on my tummy with stretch marks. I love those marks, and I'm so happy I have them, because they're a beautiful reminder of one of the best times of my life, which was being pregnant. So I'm really, really happy that I got those stretch marks, like very happy with them. And I also have stretch marks all over my breasts because they grew so much from breastfeeding, and just they grew so much in pregnancy to be able to breastfeed. And I thought I would have really struggled with that, but I don't. Now that I'm postpartum, I'm like, I actually really love it. So that's just my take on it. And I love all of it. Honestly, I really, really, really do. So I'll mix these 2 questions. Would I have another C-section, and what are my plans for my next birth? As of right now, my plans for the next birth is to try for a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after C-section. I'm going to try for vaginal birth because the problem that we had, the baby, was that the umbilical cord was wrapped around both of her legs and then her shoulder, and her head was pressed up against it like this. And it was, when I would have a contraction, she would push more up against it, and it would cut the circulation of oxygen to her. And so that's not like a problem that's usually reoccurring. It's not like I went into labor and like was dilating and then just stopped at like 4 centimeters and never got beyond that for like days, and then needed a C-section because of that. So I have a good chance of having a successful VBAC. It does obviously scare me. The heart deceleration was very, very scary, but I do think that I'm still going to try. Obviously, uterine rupture scares me as well, but I'm going to wait the recommended time frame, which is about anywhere between giving birth 2 years after your last birth or waiting 19 months to get pregnant. So I'm kind of leaning more towards the 19 months because I'm a very cautious, like play it safe kind of person. But I'm gonna wait the recommended time to avoid uterine rupture as much as possible. I would like to try to give birth at the birth center, but for that I'm going to see mostly how I'm feeling once I'm pregnant. And then also through the end of pregnancy, I'm gonna see if like everything's progressing well and baby is engaged and I'm dilating, and you know, I see that my body is already working towards labor, then I think I'll definitely try at the birth center. Whereas if I'm like 41 weeks again and I'm not engaged, I'm not dilating, maybe I would think more about the hospital in that case. So all that to say, like, it's really going to depend on the next pregnancy, but I am going to try for a VBAC. In terms of would I have another C-section, I'm willing to risk it one more time. So I'm willing to try for baby number 2, and if it ends in C-section, I will do that one more time, but I would not try to get pregnant again after that. I wouldn't try for any more babies because the C-section trauma was just too much, honestly, for me, and the recovery was just brutal. Like, honestly, it was one of the worst experiences of my life. And it's not to scare anybody if you end up having to get a C-section and stuff. It's just I didn't prep for it. I didn't know what to expect when they told me like you're gonna have a C-section, and I had no time to prep for it mentally. So I think that's also why it must have been a lot harder. I think that if you not even necessarily have a planned C-section in Canada or Quebec, at least I know that you're apparently not even allowed to have a planned C-section. It has to be for a medical reason. So let's say like you know your baby's breech and you have weeks at a time to prepare for that and to like look up like what's it like, what's recovery like, and prep for it. I think your recovery is probably easier than somebody who's just like goes in for a routine appointment and gets rushed in and suddenly is sliced open and has a newborn baby and has to recover. I think that's like 2 very different things. I still think obviously recovering from a C-section that was like you had time to mentally prep for over weeks is still very difficult, but I do think it's 2 very different things. I say this hearing other people's stories who've had C-sections because their baby was breech, because they were doing a repeat C-section and they had time to prep for it. They seem to have taken it a lot better than anyone who I've talked to who've had an emergency C-section. And since I posted my birth story, I've spoken to so many people who have had C-sections. So I feel pretty confident in what I'm saying with that. All that to say, if my second one is a C-section, I'm stopping after that. I'm not doing it again. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers the question. Next up, how do I feel now after the C-section? Now it's been 2 months. I struggled a lot emotionally at the beginning. I'm feeling a lot better emotionally now. Physically, I did have a burning sensation from my belly button down to the scar, like a burning, tingling, pins and needles, sunburn kind of feeling, where Jeremy couldn't even like hug me without it hurting. Like if he went from behind and hugged me and touched my stomach, I would like wince in pain. So even cuddling hurts, hugs hurt. And it also kind of like took a lot out of me because physical touch is my love language. And even like my spine still was hurting from the spinal block. So like tickle scratches at night, which is a lot like how I used to fall asleep. So that was just something I couldn't do anymore because my spine hurt so much. Physically, it took longer to recover actually. So I went to see an osteo last Thursday, which I said before, and I cried a lot in that session. She really worked on where they put the spinal block in. It's funny because when she was touching my spine, I was like, oh, that feels good. And then when she touched where the spinal block went, it's like I had just gotten it again, and I started crying and shaking. And I think I'm holding a lot of stress in that area of my body, like in my womb area and that part of my like back. And it really hurt, and it hurt all through the day and partially through the night. And I was crying even when I got home, feeling like maybe these feelings are never gonna go away. Anyways, I went to the osteopath, like I said, and after all of that, she like really worked on the epidural spot. She cracked my upper back because that was also blocking ever since the spinal block. Like my back would just like block and I couldn't move, and it would be so painful. So yeah, she really worked on where the spinal block was and then cracked the upper part of my back. And surprisingly, since then, I woke up in the middle of the night that night after all of that crying and stuff, and the lower part of my belly, so my belly button to here where the tingling was, suddenly I wasn't having as much of the tingling and the burning sensation. So it's starting to heal from just like one osteopath appointment. So I have another one in February. I'm hoping that I'll be able to clear that sensation completely because it's really unpleasant. But yeah, that's kind of like physically how I'm feeling after the C-section. I just got cleared for working out again and doing my normal regular activity. So I've been going for more walks. I've done like 2 1-hour walks. It's so difficult. My back ends up hurting. My abs are sore. Overall, you just feel very tender, like in this whole area. Very tender. So I don't think I'm ready to do like Pilates or like big workouts, and I'm okay with that. I'm going to take it really slow. So I'm sticking to yoga and walking basically in terms of physical exercise. 3 last questions. Is the newborn phase easier or harder than you thought? Honestly, newborn phase, way easier than I thought. I must say that I do come up from a background of being a nanny. So I was a nanny for like 8 years before getting pregnant. So I have like a lot of experience, and I worked with like a 5-month-old, and I also worked with a 1-month-old. So I have quite a lot of experience. I have nieces and a nephew that I took care of sometimes when they were babies as well. So I have a lot of experience. The thing is, everyone told me the reason why you think it's so easy is because you don't have to take them home with you and you're not with them 24/7. So I was expecting to really struggle in that sense. However, I don't find it that much different, in full honesty, and I don't really have more than that to say. I was also nervous about the nights, thinking the nights would be brutal. It would just be nonstop crying for some reason. I don't know why. Like, I've never seen a newborn cry all day long. I don't know why I thought they would cry all night long. But everyone made it sound terrible and like, you're never gonna sleep again. I don't know. The first 3 nights at the hospital, we didn't sleep, and not because of baby. It was more us. And then, actually 2 nights at the hospital, sorry. And then obviously when we got home, we had like maybe a week of adapting to her waking up. And again, it wasn't even like her the problem. It was more that like we had to go to the kitchen to nurse because that's where I was able to sit properly with my C-section recovery. And like Jeremy would hold her to my breast and like kneel on the floor. That's a whole other story. But again, it wasn't even because she was like terrible or anything or cried all night. It was just because of the extra steps we had to take to feed her. But honestly, like a couple weeks in, she was amazing. At like a month-old, she slept like 7 hours straight through the night. So I don't find the nights that difficult. And I think that if you have a pretty good schedule, and maybe I should share about that, but a good day schedule, you can look up wake windows and nap durations on taking care of babies. I would highly suggest that. And as long as you have a good schedule with them, and I don't mean to schedule like at 3 p.m. they have to nap, but knowing how long they should be awake and about how long their nap should last, and also knowing about extending naps. I talk about that in a past video. I'll put it up here. Knowing those things really helps. So all that to say, I didn't find the newborn phase that hard. It was actually easier than I expected. How do I get her to sleep 7 hours? Like I said, knowing how long her wake windows are supposed to be, actively stimulating her during those times. So doing tummy time, playing with her, reading, singing, that kind of stuff. And then once her wake window is done, so let's say that's like 50 minutes to an hour and a half right now, then you have a nap time. You try to make it last, for her at her age, it's 2 hours. You try to make it last that long. If it doesn't, it's okay. At 50 minutes, they're gonna wake up because they're transitioning, so just be aware of that. And then you just try to get them back to sleep so that they can make the 2 hours. But like I said, if they don't, that's okay. But yeah, like when they do sleep that full 2 hours, they wake up smiley and happy, and it just makes everything a lot easier. You can extend the nap by offering a bit more milk, or by carrying them or rocking them back to sleep, or if you give a pacifier, you can give a pacifier. And all of this I learned on takingcareofbabies.com. So that's how I got her to sleep 7 hours overnight. And obviously, again, that doesn't mean that every night she sleeps 7 hours. I would say on average she probably sleeps about 5 for the first stretch, and then wakes up every like 3-ish hours after that. Tips for getting the carrier. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I really struggled with getting the carrier, her in the carrier. So my tips for that is, 1, do it by yourself. Don't do it with a partner, because how I was doing it was like I put the whole thing on and then I would kind of like stretch it out and be like, okay, put her inside, and it doesn't work. And I don't know why I thought of doing it like that. Look it up on YouTube. Look up the carrier that you have and just how to get your baby in it. The Ergo Baby is actually super simple. Like you just hold them on your chest and then you lift it up and just put the straps on. And then you buckle the top. I don't know why I thought it was so complicated. And then the wrap carrier, my trick is to put it on. And then I put her on, like I hold her like this, like with her head on my shoulder. And I rock her and I get her really nice and sleepy. And then I put her feet in. So you basically put 1 foot in at a time. And then I kind of, I stretch the material over her bum. And then I drop her kind of in slowly. I lift the thing over, and then I'm like this, and I rock her a little bit more. And then when she's really asleep, I put the thing over her head, and then she stays in there. So obviously that might have sounded confusing, but just like look up a YouTube video, how to get a newborn in a fabric carrier, and they're very, very good videos, and they make it look super easy. And honestly, with practice, it is that easy. So that's kind of my tips. Do it alone, look it up on YouTube. Just trust yourself and go for it. It's stressful, you're sweating, you're like, what if she starts crying? But honestly, it ends up being fine. So those are my tips. Those are all the Q&A questions I had that I asked myself, as if I was asking my past self from before pregnancy was asking my current self. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's a long one actually for someone who said that they didn't have time to film. Hopefully this goes up today or tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for being here. I will see you next week. I'm going to be working really hard on 2 videos. One of them is going to be prioritizing my mental health and myself as a first-time mom. And the other one is going to be about me leaving baby alone with her dad for the first time for like a good amount of time. So just stay tuned for that. Bye everyone. Thank you guys so much for being here. See you next week.